Every Championship Young Player of the Year winner, did they live up to the hype? Let's find out. So guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we got quite an interesting one, I thought. So every year since 2006, the EFL has awarded a Young Player of the Year award, and what I thought we'd do for today's video is take a bit of a journey through time, all the way back to 2006 to present day, look at each winner of the award, and basically see, did that player live up to the hype or not? Obviously, some of the more recent ones are still very much in the early stages of their career, but we've got quite a few interesting ones to talk over today. And before we do hop into anything, make sure to go ahead and subscribe if you are new around here, guys. We're closing in on 30,000 subscribers, so if you aren't subscribed already, make sure to go ahead and hit that button. We've got loads planned when we do hit 30k, so it will be massively appreciated. But without any further ado, let's hop into this one. Starting out with 2006's winner, that was Preston North End's David Nugent. Now, what a career Nugent's gone on to have. Always seen as sort of one of those players who's been too good for the Championship, but never quite could make it at the Premier League level. Back in the day for North End, he was hyped up as a potential England striker in the future, and to be fair to him, he did go on and get the England cap, and against Andorra he did also bag, albeit he did, you know, kind of steal the goal of Jermaine Defoe, but that doesn't matter. Name me a striker in the comments down below that's got a better goals to game ratio at international level than David Nugent. One game, one goal. You can't, exactly. If we also take a look at the highest scoring Championship players of all time, David Nugent finds himself at the top of that list. The one goal he scored for Preston last season was enough to put him one goal clear of Ross McCormack in second place. So David Nugent very much lived up to the hype of being an excellent striker at Championship level, albeit couldn't quite make it at the Premier League. 2007's winner wasn't too bad. That was a Southampton fullback called Gareth Bale, who he's gone on to have a decent career. And it was off the back of that season with Southampton in the Championship that he then got his move to Tottenham, where things weren't also rosy to start out with. He was actually behind Ben Asuakoto in the pecking order, and very nearly made a move back to the Championship, with both Birmingham and Nottingham Forest interested in him at the time. After Forest missed out on the deal for Bale, they went ahead and signed Nicky Shorey instead from Aston Villa on loan, which, I mean, he's not Gareth Bale, is he? All jokes aside though, by far the most successful player that we got to talk about on today's list. Gareth Bale, 2 league titles, 1 Copa del Rey, 3 Club World Cups, 2 European Super Cups and 4 Champions Leagues. He's now obviously back at Spurs. We're all excited to see how he gets on there this year under Mourinho, but I think it's quite safe to say that Bale lived up to the hype. The 2008 winner was Wolves winger Michael Kiteley. Now, the season after in 08-09, Michael Kiteley was absolutely unplayable in the Championship. Like, my first proper introduction to football, the first season as a fan that I watched properly was probably the 08-09 season. That was the year where Wolves got promoted, where it was Sylvan Evanks Blake up front with Christian Malumo. So that was like the first big Championship side that I got to watch, obviously, before Wolves got overtaken by Portugal. And he was absolutely brilliant. He was dazzling on the wing for them. And to be fair to him, he went on to have a pretty decent Premier League career. You know, he played for Stoke, Burnley, as well as Wolves in the Premier League. He never went on to be capped internationally, but he's now playing his football for Rushall Olympic FC at the age of 34 years old. 2009's winner was Leeds United's Fabian Delph. Now, this was when Leeds were in League One, and Leeds have had some good talent that's come through the youth academy, but Delph at the time was very much the next big up-and-coming thing. You know, most recently we've spoken about someone like Calvin Phillips, but back in the day, Fabian Delph, I mean, he was the future of England. And to be fair to Delph, he did go on to make 20 appearances for England. He also ended up being the first choice left-back to Pep Guardiola's Man City side that picked up 100 points in the Premier League. So one of the greatest Premier League teams of all time had Delph at left-back, and you have to give it to him. He's gone on and forged a really good career for himself. 2010's winner was fullback Nathaniel Clyne from Crystal Palace, where he actually finds himself back at today. He's had quite the career of peaks and troughs, Nathaniel Clyne, hasn't he? An unbelievable prospect with Crystal Palace, then made his move over to Southampton, where he transitioned into a really good Premier League fullback, eventually got his move to Liverpool, where he started out well. But after injuries hit him, he was eventually replaced in that squad and just sort of forgotten about. Towards the end of his Liverpool career, he was appearing more on American TV than he was at Anfield.
And of course, I came in style with my homeboy, international soccer superstar Nathaniel Clyne.
But now being back at Crystal Palace, he's looking to build himself back up again. He went on to be capped 14 times by England, and there's no doubt, you know, while he was at Southampton, he very much was the next big thing. Now, 2011's winner was Connor Wickham, and this is probably the first player that we can look at and say, It didn't live up to the hype at all, really. Now, Wickham throughout his career has had quite a torrid time with injuries, hasn't he? After breaking through at Ipswich is the next big thing, he got his Premier League move to Sunderland, and then that's when things started to go wrong for him in terms of injuries, inconsistent spells in front of goal. He eventually got another Premier League move to Crystal Palace. That was when Alan Pardew came out with this vintage quote about him. People will start talking about Connor Wickham and not Harry Kane if Connor starts adding goals. I mean, the problem was Connor never started adding goals. In the 5 years that he has been at Crystal Palace, he's only scored 11 goals. Obviously, last season we did see him out on loan to Sheffield Wednesday. It is a shame about Connor Wickham because back in the day, there did seem to be something quite special there. 2012's winner, though, was Wilfried Zaha, and what a player he was in the Championship back in the day. Was part of perhaps one of the most exciting Championship promotion seasons we've seen from Crystal Palace. The sort of closest player comparison I can draw to someone like Wilfried Zaha that we've seen in the Championship recently would be someone like a Saïd Benrahma. He could just do things with the ball. He was so explosive to watch. I mean, that forward three they had of Glenn Murray, Wilfried Zaha and Yannick Bolasie was just unreal. Zaha obviously got a brief move over to Manchester United which didn't work out, and then now finds himself back at Crystal Palace where he's very much their main man in the Premier League. 2012's winner was Tom Ince, one player who I think it's probably fair to say as well that never lived up to his potential, because I think that sometimes we forget just how good Tom Ince was back in the day. Like, he was absolutely something else. For Blackpool in the 12/13 season, he scored 18 goals and got 14 assists in the Championship, so 32 goal contributions as a winger. Like, if a teenager's putting up those sorts of numbers in the Championship these days, they're getting a Premier League move for like £30 million. But for a player like Tom Ince, whenever he did eventually get that Premier League move, it just never quite clicked for him at that level, did it? At the top flight, he had spells at Crystal Palace, Hull and Huddersfield, all of which he pretty much failed to deliver. He eventually found himself back in the Championship with Derby, where once again he was fantastic again and sort of started to gain the reputation for being one of those players that was too good for the Championship, not good enough for the Premier League. But then most recently has spent the last 3 years at Stoke, where his career's just sort of dwindled out. This was a player who was on the fringes of joining Inter Milan in 2014, and these days he can't find his way into the Stoke side. 2014's winner was Derby youngster Will Hughes, who now of course finds himself back in the Championship with Watford. I still look back on this Derby side who finished third that season and just question how this side was never promoted. What a team they had. This was when they had that midfield three of Craig Bryce and Jeff Hendrick and Will Hughes and a peak Chris Martin up front. How it never happened for Derby around this time is like unbelievable. They had so many close attempts, didn't they? But for Will Hughes, you could probably argue he's had a bit of a frustrating time since leaving Derby. Obviously, he was tipped to be like England's next midfielder. Don't get me wrong, he's done well for Watford, but at times has been hampered by injuries and things like that. Derby fans, when Will Hughes was first coming through, let me know in the comments down below, how far did you think he would go? 2015's winner was MK Dons Dele Alli. This was their promotion season from League One, although I must put in there that Joe Garner did actually beat Dele Alli to the League One Player of the Year that time round, so I had to slip that one in there. But pretty much that season, Dele Alli like dragged MK Dons to promotion. He was absolutely unbelievable in League One. What was probably most amazing though was how he instantly hit the ground running at Spurs. Like, people assumed after he'd gone there that he'd spend, you know, a couple of seasons just bedding in, maybe get a loan move out somewhere. But in his first season, he hit double figures for them. His second season, scored 22 goals for them. And in some ways, Dele Alli's probably been a victim of his own success, because from putting up those unbelievable numbers early on, he was never quite able to live up to that since. 2016's winner, another entry coming in from Leeds United, this time from Lewis Cook. A lot of hype around him back in the day. Obviously a player quite similar to Will Hughes, who now finds himself back in the Championship, this time with Bournemouth. And his career trajectory in many ways hasn't actually been quite similar to Will Hughes. I think it was around the time that he got his first cap for England that he picked up that ACL injury for Bournemouth. And obviously that's such a long and hard injury to get yourself back going from. He's another player who, because he burst onto the scene at such a young age, we forget sometimes how young he is. He's still only 23 years old. I'm very excited to see how he gets on in a full season in the Championship. 2017's winner was Exeter City's Ollie Watkins. Probably one of the most talked about strikers in English football at this time is Ollie Watkins, for just how well he's done for Aston Villa so far this season. But on the back of that fantastic season with Exeter, got his move to Brentford, where he continued to progress his game. Last season was absolutely unplayable in that forward three, the BMW. And I must make a bit of an apology to Aston Villa fans, because I may have predicted them to get relegated this season in my Premier League predictions. But to be fair to me, when I put that video out, the day after you went ahead and signed Ollie Watkins, and obviously that was going to change everything. I said in that video that you needed a striker, and what a striker Ollie Watkins has been so far. And, you know, in that Villa team, the goals they've added to it, alongside keeping hold of Jack Grealish. I mean, Ollie Watkins has been a wonder to watch. He was the sort of player exactly that they were missing last season. Someone who's capable of running off the last shoulder and can keep his cool in front of goal. I mean, his game came on leaps and bounds last season at Brentford, but now doing the business in the Premier League and being tipped off with that hat-trick against Liverpool. I think it's fair to say at this point in time, Ollie Watkins is very much living up to the hype. Premier League team's winner was Ryan Sessegnon, and since leaving Fulham has had quite an interesting career. I remember in that season with Fulham in the Championship when they went on to get promoted, this back in 2017/18, it was always debated about his position, you know, where was he best? Was it as a left back or was it as a left winger? And he wasn't your sort of typical winger where he'd be great at like on the ball taking people on. What made Ryan Sessegnon so good was very much like his positional senses and the sort of areas he'd pop up in, you know, the amount of goals he'd score where he'd just ghost in at the far post and get a tap in. He'd make it look so easy, but that was the attacking intelligence he had about him from such a young age. But then since making his move over to Tottenham, we've not really seen much of the player. He's now playing his football in the Bundesliga for Hoffenheim for this season, so we'll wait and see how his career goes on and develops. Obviously, he is still very young, he's only 20 years old, but that season where he scored 16 goals for Fulham, he was fantastic. 2019's winner was Norwich City fullback Max Aarons, an absolutely integral figure to that Norwich City promotion last time round, how much their fullbacks like to bomb on in that Daniel Farke system. And to be honest, coming back down to the Championship, if there was like, I'd probably say one player who I was like most certain would go on and leave, that was Max Aarons. I thought there'd be a bunch of interest in him, but there just seems to be an absolute load of good young English right backs at the moment that there doesn't really seem to be the necessary demand there, but no doubt a Premier League player in waiting. He's had links to the likes of Bayern Munich and Barcelona as of late, and I guess for the time being we just got to enjoy seeing him in the Championship again because he is a fantastic talent. And then finishing it off with last year's winner, that was Birmingham's Jude Bellingham, who I'm sure all Birmingham fans still keep a very keen eye on to see how he's doing over in the Bundesliga, now playing his football for Borussia Dortmund. Already he's made his Champions League debut and has played a fair few matches in the Bundesliga as well. So far this season, got 2 assists to his name. But he was a real quality player in the Championship last season, and the stats probably didn't do him justice. He got 4 goals and 2 assists, but he played pretty much every position under the sun for Birmingham last season, didn't he? He played absolutely all over for them. And a lot of times at Birmingham last season, the creative sort of onus fell on the shoulders of the 16-year-old, and he never shied away from that responsibility. I think that's a testament to the player that he is at such a young age and why he ended up getting the move that he did. But guys, there we have it. There were all the previous winners of the EFL Young Player of the Year award and what they're up to at the moment. So do let me know in the comments down below, which of them do you think did live up to the hype and which ones do you think were slacking off a little bit. Also do leave a comment in the comments down below, who do you fancy as an early shout to win this year's Championship Young Player of the Year award. But like I say, we've got quite a few options in there. But apart from that, that will now wrap it up for today's video. So if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. Also please do subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content. Like I say, we're closing in on 30,000 subscribers, so any help would be massively appreciated to that. But apart from that, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.